Welcome to Thinking Outside the Soil with your host, Shani Alfalfa Seed, where we get to talk story and touch on topics about hydroponics and the farmers who grow the crops and creatures we need to eat. Good morning, and happy Aloha Friday from Blooming Health Farms, and thank you for being with me on this beautiful day. We are experiencing a bit of different weather here in Colorado. We had a crazy thunderstorm a couple days ago, and then now we are getting into our false summer, meaning it's going to get a little cold before it gets hot here in Colorado. I'm curious how many of you get to deal with bipolar weather wherever you may be. Now, recently, I have been talking a lot about chickens and our chicken crack and hydroponic fodder and how it is contributing to really amazing eggs. Well, I also know that this show has a lot of traction with those in the hydroponic fodder world. So today I wanted to go back a little bit to our roots and talk about some of the things that set me on this path. Most specifically, what set me on this path was the publishing of my book, Thinking Outside the Soil, which talks about how hydroponic fodder is helping farmers save water, become better stewards, and improve their livestock quality. And along the way of writing this book, I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of interesting people, and most specifically are those that are in industry that make hydroponic fodder systems. Now, I talk a lot about different hydroponic fodder systems and the different companies that are making a mark in the hydroponic fodder world, meaning they are really making a name for themselves in the agricultural world. And today I wanted to talk a bit about one of those companies that I don't talk about in my book. So if you're joining me today, you get to hear about a local company, local being here in Colorado, called FarmBox Foods. FarmBox Foods is a hydroponic company here in Colorado in the Denver area, and they focus on taking shipping containers, those ones that we find on cargo ships, and turning them into farms. Now, they do a few things, and I'll touch on two before I talk more about what's relevant to some of us out there. Now, they have created two really neat units out of shipping containers. Their first is the vertical hydroponic farm, and they have upcycled a shipping container to have vertical hydroponics, meaning they are able to grow a significant amount of produce in the shipping container because they are utilizing a vertical setup. Now, I want you to imagine a room full of white plastic tubes that are dangling much like drapes or curtains, and these curtains take up an entire shipping container, or most of the shipping container, if you will, and are green and lush of produce. So you can imagine that this 40-foot by 9-foot shipping container has much of the container dedicated to growing out crops, and it's pretty neat because they can grow a significant amount of produce. The other unit that FarmBox Food makes is a gourmet mushroom farm. So they've taken a shipping container and turned it into a system that can produce gourmet mushrooms. Those are the things like lion's mane, oysters, and the other medicinal mushrooms out there. Now, we're not talking about the psychedelic mushrooms, though you could utilize a similar setup. Now, the most interesting system of relevance to me and to those of us out there with livestock is the FarmBox Foods hydroponic fodder farm. Now, their hydroponic fodder farm is a shipping container that is dedicated to growing microgreens and or sprouts for your livestock. The fodder has been shown to improve the health of livestock, and using one of these units, you're able to grow a reliable source of nutritious food right there on your farm without a lot of input, and you get a lot of yield out of it. So, for example, these shipping containers, now they measure about 40 feet long and 9 feet wide. And I had the opportunity to go down to their R&D site and get a look at one of these units. And so this unit has been divided up into essentially two sections. You have the area where you do your preparation, and you have your area where you do your grow out and harvest. About 4/5 of the container is dedicated to the hydroponic fodder grow out. And FarmBox Foods is using barley as their primary crop for livestock nutrition. And they claim that they can harvest 850 pounds per day. Now that's incredible when you think about the amount of space that they are using. And one of these units is able to feed about 35 beef cattle per day. So you're on a relatively small footprint, under 400 square feet, feeding 35 cattle per day. If you have horses, you could feed about 25 of those horses per day, according to the Fodder Farms calculations of what they do. Now, in order to grow 850 pounds of barley every single day, you can imagine that you're going to need some inputs. But what's really great about the hydroponic fodder farm is that they're using significantly less inputs than traditional soil agriculture. So, for example, that hydroponic fodder farm that I'm talking about uses about 550 gallons of water per day. And that means that this system is using about 2/3 of a gallon of water to grow a pound of food. Yeah, that's insane amount of yield for that little amount of water. Now, as I'm sitting here reciting some of these statistics, I've also simultaneously pulled up the FarmBox Foods website, because there's a lot of really good information on that website. And you may be wondering, Sean, why are you talking so much specifically about FarmBox Foods? I don't think that you mention it in your book very much at all. Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that FarmBox Foods and Blooming Health Farms have formed a partnership. So we are advocating the container farms for those of you out there that have small scale operations or are looking at augmenting or supplementing your operation in order to do things differently. So one of the advantages by growing fodder on site year round is that farmers and ranchers are able to avoid a lot of the issues that we can see in traditional agriculture. And over the last few years, we have seen significant supply chain disruptions. We've seen challenges in sourcing proper supplements. We've seen spikes in forage and hay prices. So these controlled climate farms are able to provide a reliable local source of that fresh fodder, which will help shield farmers from any of those weather and climate impacts. Like we had a significant rain event here a couple days ago, and that flooding can be a significant challenge to farmers when they're trying to manage their irrigation practices. So FarmBox Foods has created a hydroponic fodder farm inside of a shipping container, and about 320 square feet of that shipping container is outfitted with all of the things that you need to automatically and easily grow live feed every day. You can grow up to 850 pounds of feed every single day, and that's because they have an automated plumbing and electrical system with all of the sensors that you need to control the conditions inside of this fodder farm. Of note, to bring it back to where I began, This farm uses significantly less water than would be needed for growing the same thing in a traditional soil system. So these are sustainable food sources for our livestock. They're sustainable food sources for farmers and ranchers to be able to get better control of what they're doing in their operation. They're able to grow year-round in any climate. It's extremely efficient with water, and you get extremely high yields. So if you get a chance, head on over to FarmBox Foods and check out their hydroponic fodder farm. Or if you're interested in knowing more about how hydroponic fodder is helping farmers save water, improve their livestock quality, and helping us all become better stewards, head on over to thinkingoutsidethesoil.com and get yourself a copy of my book. I am also offering a free consultation for those of you who are interested in hydroponics or hydroponic fodder farm. We can talk more about the hydroponic fodder farm by FarmBox Foods, or we can talk more about how the hydroponic fodder that we are using called Chicken Crack is helping us get amazing eggs as well. And that is all I have for today's show. Thank you for being with me on another episode of Thinking Outside the Soil. Take care and have a lovely day.